Hello everyone and welcome to today's Wild Rift video. Today I'm going to be talking about the items in Wild Rift patch 6.2. We have a lot to go through with so many updates happening to all the crit items, the Yordle items coming into the Rift, and also boots upgrades. In general, you could take this tier list with a pinch of salt. You could basically say that this is a video where I just run through and talk about all of the items. However, there are some items that I think you should completely avoid, which I will be talking about in this video as well in each section. So first, going through the physical items, and there are also, even though I say there are some items that you shouldn't build, there are also some items that you should build in every single game, and they're pretty much the items that are going to be in the S tier. Bloodthirster being the best crit item at the moment in the current game. Even though we did lose a lot of AD, around 20 to 25 AD on the Bloodthirster, we did gain the lifeline passive from Immortal Shield Bow. This item is now a core item on every single crit AD carry, and also is even being used if you go for junglers or any other champions that want to build crit. Champions like Rengar, Viego, Master Yi, all of these champions are now building crit because of how powerful Bloodthirster is, on top of items like Essence Reaver, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. But a great item that still gives you the most amount of AD outside of Infinity Edge, and also giving you that lifeline passive, just allowing you to survive a lot longer during team fights. First Yordle item, Yordle Death Stance. I have to admit, I kind of put this under the radar a little bit. I was thinking to myself that this change wouldn't be too much, and I think I definitely misinterpreted how powerful this item was going to be. Them changing the passive to now block both magic and physical damage has actually made this item completely broken. There are so many bruisers, if not every bruiser at the moment, that are building this as an item, sometimes second, sometimes even third item, which means that you can now block a lot of damage. You of course still have quite a lot of armor and also attack damage in there as well as a bit of ability haste, but overall them changing just one slight thing, changing it from physical damage to both physical and magic damage, has made this item completely broken. I have to say, I was completely wrong about the item. I didn't think it'd be that strong, but it is now one of the strongest bruiser items in the game. Seralda's Grudge as well, another really strong Yordle item that has been updated. Applying the Frostbite will now be able to, you apply 3 Frostbite, you'll be able to bleed enemy champions, allowing them to take additional damage, and also you can apply Grievous Wounds. The Grievous Wounds part I don't think is the main point of this item, even though it is nice to apply Grievous Wounds when you do hit 3 abilities, which is quite nice. But I think the main part is that Mortal Reminder did get quite a big of a nerf. It now gives attack speed. It now doesn't give as much AD. So now Seralda's Grudge now gives, I believe, an extra 15 AD, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 25 to 40. So it's an extra 15 AD. So again, every single bruiser is building Seralda's Grudge as a third or fourth item, because it gives a lot of AD, because it still gives us the percent armor pen, which is still so important on bruisers to try and break through other bruisers that are building Death Stance, but also tanks as well. And now you just get additional damage on top of that, which also scales with your bonus attack damage. So an extra bleed effect for more damage. The item is now a lot stronger. It's a bit more expensive, but it's definitely worthwhile. And Trinity Force is still one of the strongest items in the game. Now that the Dragons and the Rift Herald is delayed till 6 minutes, you can now finish Trinity Force and boots on pretty much most champions, especially if you're playing in the jungle. The jungle builds right now are just Trinity Force as a first item. Unless you're playing some assassins, you can go for Ghost Blade or maybe the anti-shield item instead, Serpent's Fang. But Trinity Force can now be built on top of your boots before the first dragon and the first Rift Herald spawns. This gives you the biggest spike out of any item in the game. And like I said, most bruisers are building this in the jungle now. If you think of Hecarim, and Bessa, Riven, any of these junglers that want to play more bruiser style, every single bruiser right now in Wild Rift goes Trinity Force, Death Stance into Seralda's Grudge. These are your 3 core items that you should be building on most bruisers right now in Wild Rift, and these items are just very, very powerful. Just behind that in the A tier, we still have Divine Sunderer up here. Divine Sunderer is still very strong if you're going for, if you're going to play in the barrel lane and if you're playing against tanks. Divine Sunderer just offers a lot more trading potential and a lot more tankiness in the kit, which is going to give you a bit more survivability when you're playing in the barrel lane. However, there are even some barrel lane champions now that are skipping Divine Sunderer, going for Trinity Force, and having Yordle's Death Stance as that survivability tool in your kit. But Divine Sunderer is still a very strong item, and it's still very good when playing in the barrel lane. Mortal Mortius is still also a very strong item. Most of the time, of course, you only want to build this when you're playing against a lot of magic damage. But when you combo now more of Mortius and Death Stance, these two items just make you completely unkillable against any magic damage at all. Of course, there are probably still some burst mages like Aurora, for example, which can still 100 to 0 you, but there are some scenarios where you can build this on like AD carries as well. And if you're playing against Aurora, you might not get one shot from 100 to 0. You'll probably go to like 10% HP, but you won't get one shot anymore because of that Demon Bane passive being able to store a shield, which can be up to a 400 magic shield, which is pretty big. On top of the magic resist, and also you get the attack damage as well. So very good if you're playing it against any sort of magic damage. I'll talk about the support items a little bit later on. Serpent's Fang, with so much shielding in the game, we talk about before with Gargle Stoneplate, with Enchanter supports with shielding, also just shielding in general from champions like Ambessa, Vi, any of these champions, Riven as well. With Bloodthirster now being a core item on every single AD carry, Serpent's Fang is being built now more than ever before. Every single game now, you are at least going to be coming up against one shielding factor, whether that's Bloodthirster, Gargle Stoneplate, the champion, Enchanter supports are also very popular. So Serpent's Fang is a must for most champions in most games. Now, of course, there are some scenarios where you don't need Serpent's Fang and you can go for other items instead, but I would say 90% of the games you will be building Serpent's Fang because you need to reduce the shielding because the enemies have a lot of shielding on them. As a Retriever, I don't think is quite S tier. There are some champions that can still dodge this. However, this item is very, very powerful for champions that utilize it very well. Champions that use their abilities a lot. Champions that auto attack a lot after using the abilities. Champions like Lucian, Corki, Rengar, Viego, champions like that, even Master Yi as well. Sometimes even Kai'Sa players are building this item at the moment. It has the old Solari Charge Blade passive. So if you think of it, basically champions that use Solari Charge Blade before can also now use this item as well. And even if they don't have mana, champions like Rengar, for example, Rengar is still building this as a first item. I think that just shows how powerful this item is and how powerful the Spellblade passive is without needing the extra mana that you need from the Mana Siphon passive. You're basically down a passive, but this item just gives you so much extra bonus damage that it's very powerful in the current meta. Even though I say that Yordle Soror's Grudge is stronger right now than Mortal Reminder, it is still a core item on every single crit champion. Doesn't matter if you're building crit in the jungle, crit in AD carry role, crit in the top lane, you need to build Mortal Reminder. It's still a must. You still get the percent armor pen. Applying Grievous Wounds is still nice, and most of the people, or most of the champions I should say, that build Mortal Reminder also benefit from the attack speed. So that's why this item is still going to be very core on a lot of champions. Eclipse, very nice buff in the patch as well. Extra 5 AD, extra percent damage on the passive. It did get increased by 100 gold, but I think that is definitely worth it for the stats that it got given. Eclipse is a core item for pretty much every Baron Lane bruiser right now. If you think of like junglers, as I just mentioned, for junglers, you go Trinity Force, Soror's Grudge into Death Stance. Top laners, you go Eclipse into Yordle's Death Stance and Soror's Grudge. Eclipse is very, very powerful, helps you a lot with trading. The reason why you don't build this in jungle is because it doesn't really help your jungle clear as much. Trinity Force helps you a lot with your jungle clear and just your carry potential in general. Eclipse is a lot better for trading against champions, trying to win trades, trying to go all in, trying to go for tower dives, anything like that. The shielding, the damage that it gives is just very powerful against champions compared to minions in the compared to monsters, in the jungle. However, there are some people now that are skipping Eclipse, going Trinity Force as a first item, even in the Baron lane. That's why Trinity Force is sitting in S tier. Magnetic Blaster now giving attack damage and now also giving bonus movement speed as well makes this item very powerful on most AD carries. I would say it's probably the best attack speed item right now in the game. It beats the new Phantom Dancer, it beats the Soul Transfer, it beats Runa's Hurricane, beats all of these items. Magnetic Blaster is just very powerful, now giving attack damage. You lost a bit of attack speed, but that's completely fine because the extra range that you get and the extra damage that you get is going to be very, very powerful. And Youmuu's Ghostblade, also very powerful still. You can, it kind of is a difference. You kind of decide whether you want to go for Ghostblade or Serpent's Fang, or sometimes you can just build both. There are a lot of Assassin junglers at the moment, like Lee Sin, like Kha'Zix, which are building both Youmuu's Ghostblade and Serpent's Fang. Ghostblade in general is still a very strong item. You get extra movement speed when you attack an enemy champion. You gain a bit of extra bursts of attack speed as well, which is going to help your overall damage output. Overall, it's still a very strong item with Serpent's Fang. Like I said, there are some games where you decide between Serpent's Fang or Youmuu's Ghostblade, but there are some junglers which build both right now. Onto the B tier, these items are still good. However, there are other alternatives which are obviously stronger in the A tier, but these items can still be a huge benefit for your champions. Infinity Edge with the new passive sometimes can get built as a last item. I have tried it a few times. I've sometimes used this on Xayah, on Tristana, and also Jhin. You could build Infinity Edge as a last item, get the extra crit strike damage, which can help your damage out a lot. However, this does make you very vulnerable. It does mean that you're not going to be building items like more of Mortius or Guardian Angel to help with your defensive stats. But if you want to go for full glass cannon, if you want to deal as much damage as possible, you can go for Infinity Edge. However, this item is still expensive, so I wouldn't build this before the 5th item. I would only ever build this as a last item because there are just so many other better crit items. I mentioned already Bloodthirster, Essence Reaver, Magnetic Blaster, and Mortal Reminder. If you build all of these 4 items, there is just no room for Infinity Edge at all. The extra crit damage obviously got nerfed a long time ago, but you compare the price, 3,400, 2,900, 3,000 gold, 3,100, and 3,300. It's just a little bit more expensive than Bloodthirster, but Bloodthirster is an infinitely better item than Infinity Edge. You only lose 10 AD, but you gain so much more value from it in general. So yeah, I'd only build this really as a last item. Titanic Hydra I'll talk about in the tank section. Soul Transfer, new item. I think it's pretty mid. I think it can be okay on some champions. I think champions like Ashe could be pretty good on. Zeri, maybe Caitlyn and Kai'Sa. These champions, the only champions that I would really build this item on. I just think it's way too expensive, in my opinion. It kind of the same with Infinity Edge, is that this item is too expensive. It doesn't give you a lot of attack damage. The clones can be helpful to help your damage output, but the problem is you can't really tell the clones what to hit. Sometimes the clones walk out of range. Sometimes the clones are a bit weird at times, and sometimes they spawn when you don't want them to spawn. Sometimes they just follow you and they attack you. I don't know. This item is just very unique and it's just very weird, and I don't really feel the benefit compared to other crit items that I've spoken about already. I think it can work on some champions that can be pretty good, but in general, I just think it's pretty mid. I think it works on some champions. It doesn't work on a lot of them. I see a lot of Yasuo's and Yone's and Master Yi's building this item, which is complete int, by the way, but yeah, I mean, we let them ball. Sundered Sky, pretty mid now. I mean, it was a strong item in the last patch, but I think with other bruiser items just becoming stronger, like Death Stance, like Sorolda's Grudge, Eclipse as well, also becoming stronger, I think Sundered Sky has kind of dropped it in power. There are some champions that can still use this very well. Wukong and Riven are the champions that I can think of. However, I would much rather go like Eclipse into Yordle's Death Stance or Eclipse into Trinity Force and just leave Sundered Sky as maybe a 4th or 5th item, which even then I'd rather build like Sterix Gauge instead or another item instead. I don't really like Sundered Sky in general as an item, but I still think it can give a lot of value to some champions that can, benefit from the first attack. Manamune works on some champions, doesn't work on any. Again, pretty mid item. Core on a lot of champions. I say a lot of champions. Core on some champions, but overall, just the value that you get from Manamune is not worth it. Even for champions that want to build Manamune now, like Corki, just skips Manamune completely and just goes for Essence Reaver instead. Essence Reaver is just a lot better item now to help with mana compared to Manamune. Yordle's Duskblade. The invisibility is very powerful. I do think that Ghostblade and Serpent's Fang is still better than the Yordle Dustblade item. However, the invisibility is very powerful. You turning invisible is very strong. I think if it kept the 55 AD, this item would be very broken. But because the AD went down from 55 to 50, I think it's kind of evened itself out a little bit. Invisibility is very good. The extra movement speed is very good. However, it's kind of overshadowed by Serpent's Fang because the anti-shield and Youmuu's Ghostblade just getting a really powerful spike as the first item. Again, with this also given extra 5 AD, it's very, very powerful. Yordle's Runans, a lot of people don't know that the spread damage of Runans actually got nerfed. So in terms of on-hit items in general, they're not very powerful right now. Any really on-hit items like Wit's End Blade, Rune King, Nash's Tooth, Terminus, Rune's Hurricane, all of these items got nerfed, and on-hit items in general just a lot weaker than crit items. So Yordle's Rune's Hurricane is staying in the B tier. It's still good on some champions, and it still can be used as a 5th item. But even now as a 5th item, I think I would much rather go for Infinity Edge for the extra crit damage over Rune's Hurricane now. You lost AD, you lost a lot of the spread damage. I would love to, and I know a lot of people have commented about this item as well, and I totally agree that if this item had the crit back than what it used to have, I think this item would be core on a lot of champions. And I think it'd be very, very powerful. But unfortunately, this item doesn't give crit, so that's why the value is a lot lower than the other crit items. Black Cleaver can still be good on some champions that can benefit from this very well. Garen can still benefit from this very well. Basically, champions that can use your abilities a lot and use your auto attacks a lot to be able to reduce the enemy armor. Can be good on some champions. Again, a pretty mid item. There are just other bruiser items that are stronger at the moment, but overall, it's still decent on some champions if you still want to go towards that route of being able to reduce the enemy's armor quite quickly. As I mentioned, on-hit items not as strong as what they once were. You know, items like Terminus and Rune's Hurricane last patch were very, very powerful. And you would build on-hit items sometimes on Tristana, Caitlyn. There were champions that you didn't originally want to build on-hit items on, but because they were so powerful, you would build them on these champions anyway because you get so much value from these items. But with crit items getting stronger, these on-hit items are just lowered in value. But there are still champions that can still run Terminus and still benefit from the extra armor, the extra mag resist, and the extra pen that you get. Collector, a much better item for sure. However, it's much better to go Bloodthirster as a first item. This item is just way too good for survivability. You know, being able to build this as a first item. It gives you AD, it gives you survivability, it gives you the insane physical vamp as well. You still want to go Bloodthirster as a first item. But for champions like Samira, for example, you can go Collector second item. Misfortune, you can go Collector second item. Akshan as well. Even champions like Viego can go Collector as a second item. But I wouldn't really build this as a first item. Even though you can snowball the game out of control if you get ahead early, I think Bloodthirster for the survivability is just way too powerful right now. You just need to build this as a first item. But Collector, a much better item now than what it was in the previous patch. Navori Quickblade, still a pretty unique item that only really gets used on some champions, but the champions that can use this item get a really, really big, really insane value from it. Being able to increase the damage of your abilities is very, very nice. Champions like Tristana, Severe, and also Zaya use this item very well. Outside of that, though, there are not really any other champions. You'd much rather go other crit items instead. If you think of Lucian right now, Lucian doesn't build Navori Quickblades anymore because he doesn't really benefit from the extra damage from his abilities, and also there are just other items that give him more damage: Essence Reaver, Magnetic Blaster, and also Bloodthirster. Phantom Dancer, at the start of the patch, I thought this item would be very strong, but it just seems like the AD is just not there. Like, the damage that you get from this item is just not there. If you build this item, you can benefit a lot from the attack speed, and I think there are still champions like Vayne that can maybe build this item. But outside of that, even though this item is very cheap, the attack damage is just way too low. 20 attack damage compared to other items is just way too low. And like I said, Magnetic Blaster is just a much stronger item at the moment in the current meta in terms of attack speed. And with other items also giving you attack speed now, like Mortal Reminder and also Navori Quickblades, there isn't really any room to fit Phantom Dancer in your build, but it can still work on some champions. And Hullbreaker, it's a decent item. I think the problem is right now that people are building Hullbreaker on the wrong champions, and also building Hullbreaker too early on in the game. I think people are building Hullbreaker as a first or second item. It's completely int. completely in. You should be building Eclipse and Trinity Force as first items, because these items just give you so much more power when you're trading, when you're trying to go for 1v1 solo kills. And even as the second item now, you want to go for Yordle's Death Stance to help with your survivability. If you go Hullbreaker as the first item, remember that Hullbreaker doesn't give you resistances anymore. It only gives the minions resistances. And also you need to build this on champions that auto attack a lot. Champions like Irelia, Fiora. You don't really want to build this on champions like Sion anymore, because you're not really benefiting from that skipper passive. You can still push with Sion with this item. You can still take towers fairly quickly, but overall I think this item is completely bait at the moment on champions like Sion, and people are getting baited to build this as a first or second item because they have nostalgia with how strong this item was like a few seasons ago. Like a year ago now, was it that Hullbreaker got removed? Or maybe it was 2 years ago now. But Hullbreaker is just not as nowhere near as good as what it was before. It's still good on some champions, but you only want to build this as a third or fourth item. And then moving into C tier, we're starting to get into items that you just don't really want to build right now. Blade of Ruin King is just a terrible item overall. I don't really like this item. Again, on-hit champions in general are just very weak. You much rather build crit or just bruiser on some champions. And even if you want to build items that are going to help you against tanks, you'd much rather build Seralda's Grudge instead, which gives you % armor pen. You'd much rather build Black Cleaver instead of Blade of Ruin King. The item is just terrible. It's not very good. I think it only gets used on one champion, Irelia. That's it. Gnash's Tooth is just way too unique. Again, you only build this on AP champions that want to benefit from the attack speed. I'm thinking of Varus, of course, with the changes that came through with the attack speed and the ability power now being a huge benefit. You can maybe build this on Gwen as well. Outside of that, I can't really think of any other champions that would want to build this item in the current meta. Spirit Shojin, I think a lot of people were telling me that I'm underrating this item, and maybe I am, but I don't really like the item at all. I think this item can be used on maybe champions like Camille, that you can lock people in place with your ultimate, so you can benefit a little bit from the ability haste from your basic abilities. It can help you by gaining a little bit of extra movement speed to be able to score a takedown and then get the extra reset and make sure that you can use your abilities more often. But I think I just much rather prefer other bruiser items at the moment in the current meta. I think this item is a bit too expensive. It does give good stats though, to be fair, like HP, attack damage, a bit of movement speed as well. But like I said, maybe I'm not really valuing this item too much compared to other items. But in general, I just don't think this item is very good. Wit's End as well got a nerf in patch 6.2. This item is pretty much dead now. You only, again, build this on champions that only really have the opportunity to go on hit, like Irelia, for example. But outside of that, you just don't want to build Wit's End at all. The damage is very low, and just in general, the item costs way too much for the value that it gives. And Edgenite as a lethality item doesn't really get built at the moment. Like I mentioned before, there are champions that are just building Yomu's Ghostblade, Serpent's Fang, and Seralda's Grudge. They're just going for very cheap items and then going for Seralda's Grudge. And then your fourth and fifth item, most champions are just going Trinity Force because the amount of value that you get. And then you can go like Guardian Angel as the last item if you want to, or something else. Edgenite is not really getting built right now because it's quite expensive. It also doesn't give you a lot of armor pen as well. The Annul passive can be quite nice. The spell shield can be very beneficial, but in general, the damage that Edgenite gives compared to other lethality items is just a bit too low. And Kempong Chainsword is just the worst item in the game. You never want to build this item. It's terrible. If you want anti-heal, just go Mortal Reminder or just go Seralda's Grudge instead. This item is terrible. Onto magic items. Not really much has changed with magic items. The items that were kind of already strong just got even more powerful. But there are some item changes in here that I definitely want to talk about. Death Cap is still very powerful. Of course, gets built on pretty much every AP mage or AP assassin. Just the value that you get from this item is very good. There's not really much to say here. A lot of ability power. Increase your overall ability power. Yippee-doo. Infinity Orb was already very powerful in the previous patch, and now they've just given it even more powerful. Even more power, I should say. The ability power did go down from 85 to 80, which nerfed a little bit of the damage, but the new Thunderwall passive is just way too good. This is just way too good of a passive. When an enemy champion dies within 3 seconds of taking inevitable demise effects, a lightning bolt strikes at the spot where they die and you deal huge AoE damage. This is so good on so many champions that can just one-shot. I've been seeing Aurora run around with this, doing so much AoE damage. I've been seeing Syndra go around with this, doing huge AoE damage. Orianna as well. They just made this item even stronger than what it was in the previous patch, and that's why it stays in the S tier. Again, you still want to build this on every single mage, every single assassin that you find in the game. Very, very powerful. Unfortunately, we don't have a support section in the website yet. We're still working to get that sorted. But like the support items are still in the magic section, so I can still talk about them. Yordle's Harmonic Echo, again an item that was already strong in the previous patch. They just made it even stronger. It did lose 15 ability power, which seems like quite a lot, but the new passive that has come in for the Harmonic Echo passive, being able to now have the old passive that was with Harmonic Echo, where if you heal or shield someone, you gain AoE healing and shielding effect now, which is very, very nice. And also you'll be able to heal a percentage of their maximum health over 3 seconds. A core item on every single support that you should be building, or every single enchanter support that you should be building in every single one of your games. Ocean's Trident, to be honest, even if the enemy champions don't have any anti-shield, this item is just crazy value. Like, look at it, like 200 health, 80 ability power for 2,600 gold. This still gets built a lot when you have when you're against a lot of shielding. Of course, as I mentioned already with Serpent's Fang, there is a lot of shielding in the game right now with Bloodthirster, Gargle Stoneplate, and just enchanter supports in general. But for 2,600 gold, you get 80 ability power, 200 health, the percent magic pen, which is of course on all items, and ability haste as well. Insane, absolutely insane how much value Ocean's Trident gives you in the game, and it's very, very valuable right now. Yordle's Liandry's Torment got a huge buff in this patch and is very, very viable right now. Champions like Brand, Zyra, and Morgana have gone up in value because of this item. Now that you'll be able to deal true damage every 4 seconds, and also the percent of the AP percent, sorry, is now scaled from 0.6% to now 2%. So you have 0.6 to 2% instead of the original 0.0001% of your ability power, which meant that Liandry's Torment was normally built as a second or third item after you get a little bit of ability power. Now you can build this as a first item. Lilia has also gone up in value as well. You build it as a first item and you can benefit from the true damage. Awakened Soul Stealer, there is a meta right now with some mages especially, and also AP assassins in general, that are just going double pen items. They're going Infinity Orb straight into Awakened Soul Stealer, and they're just benefiting from the insane amount of magic pen that you can get from these two items. This is also very powerful because of Death Stance being a very popular item. So now you're trying to burst enemy champions as quick as possible. Of course, Death Stance is going to deny some of that burst damage now, but if you build Yordle's Infinity Orb and Awakened Soul Stealer, you can benefit a little bit extra from the extra magic pen, the extra plus magic pen that you get from these two items. So both these items right now are very powerful and built a lot on some AP mages and also a lot of AP assassins. Ardent Sensor is even stronger than what it was again in the previous patch. One of the other reasons why on-hit items are just not as powerful as crit items right now is because of Ardent Sensor. Ardent Sensor now allows you to crit. So the more crit chance you have, the more damage you're going to be dealing with Ardent Sensor, which is going to give you a huge amount of burst damage overall. So Ardent Sensor on top of crit items also being very powerful makes this item very strong. B-tier items, these are items that are still decent. Lichbane is still very powerful, used a lot on the champions that can auto attack after using their abilities. Champions like Zoe, Echo, even Diana, Gragas. There are a lot of champions that can still benefit from Lichbane, and of course this damage does scale with your ability power, making it a bit stronger. Luden's Echo is still very good if you want to play, if you want to help, you want a bit of help with your wave clear. However, there are some champions now that are skipping Luden's Echo and just going straight into Infinity Orb and Awakened Soul Stealer, or even Lichbane. As I mentioned, you know, Zoe before with Lichbane, you now skip Luden's Echo. Syndra, you skip Luden's Echo. Even Aurora now, you skip Luden's Echo and you just go for full burst damage. You become more of a burst mage rather than a control mage by building Luden's Echo and helping with your wave clear. Riftmaker still used on a lot of mages and also a lot of assassins. Just the Omnivamp that you get is very powerful with the amount of burst damage that you're dealing. And also if you stay in combat for a few seconds, you can also deal true damage as well. Very powerful item overall. Malignance also very good. It got a buff just before 6.2 where you get more ability power now and it costs 100 less gold. Still a very good item, but a bit more unique compared to Luna's Echo. Luna's Echo is more of a standard item that you can build or control mages. Malignance is a bit more unique. Doesn't work on all champions, but just helps a little bit from the AoE damage that you can get. And if you can stun enemy champions in that AoE damage, you're just dealing more damage over time. Crown of Shattered Queen, again, an item that a lot of champions build, a lot of AP champions build. Because of the safeguard passive, and the item in general still gives you a lot of ability power, ability ace, and a % magic penetration as well. Again, when you go for this burst build with Infinity Orb, Awakened Soul Stealer into Rabadon's Death Cap, and then you probably go Ocean's Trident, people build Crown of Shattered Queen as the final item to help you a little bit with that mana, but also to give you that spell shield to stop you from, like, I don't know, Embessa ultimates, Nocturne ultimates jumping in, Nautilus ultimates. There are quite a few champions that can just dive on you very quickly, so Crown is just there to help you with a bit for survivability. Rylai is also a very good item now that it finally has the % magic pen that got added in before patch 6.2. This item is now very viable in a lot of champions, but overall it's still unique, still doesn't get used that much, but it's still a great item overall. And Staff of the Flowing Water, you still build this because you want the healing and shielding percentage on supports. So you just go Harmonic Echo into Ardent Sensor into Staff of the Flowing Water. These 3 items are your core items right now on support champions. And then into C tier, we're starting to get to items that you just want to avoid completely. Archangel Staff, there are so many champions now that just build other mana items instead of Archangel Staff. The only champion that builds Archangel Staff now are Ryze and Kassadin, and that's because their kit incentivizes them to build mana. Kassadin, of course, wants a lot of mana to teleport with his ultimate, and Ryze wants mana because the more mana he has, the more damage he has. Outside of that, no one else ever builds this item, and that's why it's in C tier. You just want to avoid this item completely at the moment. It is very weak compared to other mana items and other AP items. Morello, even if you are against champions that have magic, have a lot of healing, Morello doesn't really actually get built too much because there are just other items that are just better at the moment. As I mentioned, with Awakened Soul Stealer, Infinity Orb, and Ocean's Trident, all of these items just give you way more value than Morellonomicon. You can obviously still build this against a lot of healing, but there are a lot of champions that are just like, okay, my top lane is going to build Mortal Reminder, or sorry, my ADC is going to build Mortal Reminder, my support is going to build Thornmail, my jungler is going to build Seralda's Grudge, my top lane is going to build Seralda's Grudge. So I don't need anti-heal on my hit. Mages are not really there for the anti-heal because they don't deal a lot of consistent damage. They want to deal more burst damage with their abilities, which is why Morello is in C tier. Psychic Protector, no one ever uses. I don't even know why this item got added into the game in the first place. There is not really any tank mages that could really benefit from this. If you think of champions that could benefit from this, like Mordekaiser and Rumble potentially, because they build Liandry's and other items that give you health and ability power, it's still not that good. You still much rather go for other items instead that just give you much more value. Again, Horizon Focus, they tried to buff this item by giving you, I can't even remember what they gave you. They gave you like extra vision for a few more seconds and some other stuff. Like, I don't even know what they buffed with this item, to be fair. Again, not very good. Other items are just a lot better. Same with Cosmic Drive. Again, other items are just a lot better than Cosmic Drive. You could benefit a lot from the movement speed on some champions, but overall, this item is just very weak. Imperial Mandate, no one ever builds this item anymore. I cannot think of any champion that builds this item. Even if you normally build this on like Rakan, you don't want to build it on Rakan anymore. I can't even think of any other champions that would build this item. Yeah, it's just, you don't get a lot of value from this item at all. Battle Fantasy, by far one of the worst mana items in the game. You still want to build Luna's Echo or Malignance or any other mana item, or even Crown of Shattered Queen over Battle Fantasy. The extra damage can get dodged. It doesn't give you that much value, and just overall isn't a good item. And Rod of Ages, a lot of champions are skipping Rod of Ages now. If you think of Swain that built Rod of Ages before, you now just build Malignance into 4 AP. Even Casting now, there are some Casting players that are just skipping Rod of Ages because Archangel just gives you enough mana anyway on top of other items. And the main reason for this is because games are a lot quicker now. So you actually don't even get to a point where when Rod of Ages can get fully stacked. Of course, Rod of Ages gives you the most amount of ability power, the most amount of HP, and the most amount of mana, but you need to wait until this item gets fully stacked. The problem is that because games are ending so quickly, it means that Rod of Ages doesn't have enough time to stack. So you're not going to get the full value from Rod of Ages in a game. Then Medjai's, just skip this item completely. This item's complete garbage. If you had Dark Steel in the game, it would be pretty cool. But Medjay just in general is just complete dog shit. And Crystalline Reflector is probably one of the worst items in the game. Again, champions that could benefit from this, like Gwen, Mordekaiser, Rumble, you'd much rather go other items. Even if you get a lot of AD champions, it's just much better to go other items instead. Or just build armor boots. If you build armor boots, that gives you more value than Crystalline Reflector. It's just absolutely terrible. On to defensive items. I'll quickly go back to Titanic Hydra. I think Titanic Hydra is a decent item at the moment. I think Titanic Hydra can be very good when paired with health items like Heartsteel and Sunfire Aegis, which is very powerful at the moment in the current meta. And obviously the more HP you have, the more damage you have. So Titanic Hydra can be pretty good at the moment in the current meta, and I think there are some scenarios where this item is very powerful with how strong Heartsteel and Sunfire Aegis is as a combo at the moment. I don't think I skipped any items, did I? All right, on to defensive items. Zeke's Convergence, still a very strong item on pretty much every tank support builds this at the moment, and even some bruisers still build this right now. You want to still build this as the first item. You want to still benefit from the extra damage that you're getting and the extra slow that you're getting. As I said, we're getting to a scenario now where bruisers are building this, even sometimes over Death Stance. I do think that Death Stance is now a better armor item because it gives you damage and also blocks magic damage. But if you're against a full AD team or like a team that has mostly armor and mostly AD damage, you just much rather go Zeke's Convergence because you benefit from the extra damage that you can deal, which is still very, very powerful. So that's why this item is still in S tier. Yordle's Trap is just the biggest snowball item in the game. I talk about supports going Zeke's Convergence as a first item. If you want to snowball the game out of control, and if your champion benefits from Yordle Trap, you just build this as a first item. You could build this as a first item. You could play super aggressive in the dual lane, even if you're ahead early on. You could build this as a first item and just keep diving over and over again. You just keep going for fights. You keep getting as many kills as possible, and you're spreading so much gold to yourself and also allied champions. So very strong item. Supports right now just build these two as two items. You know, Zeke's Convergence into Yordle Trap. They build these two as just two core items for supports right now. But like I said, Zeke's Convergence is even more powerful because you build this on bruisers as well. And Twin Guard is just still overall a very strong item. You can build this on bruisers, you can build this on supports, you can build this on tanks. It doesn't really matter what sort of champion you build this on, it still gives you insane value. You even build this on AD carries sometimes as well, because the extra armor and magic resist that you get is just absolutely insane. And now the Gargle Stoneplate also now scales with armor and magic resist. You can build Twin Guard into Gargle Stoneplate and you have more value from the shield than what you had in the previous patch. Again, I'll talk about support items at the end. Warmog's still very good as well. You can build this and just get a lot of HP in general. It is still a very cheap item as well. You can build this as a third item after Zeke's Convergence and Yordle Trap on supports, or you can build this as a third item or even second item on tank top laners as well. This item just gives you a crazy amount of value in terms of healing with a very, very cheap price point. Oh, Sterak's Gauge I actually never spoke about in the physical section, but I guess I'll talk about it now. It's kind of weird sometimes the way these items are worked, but Sterak's Gauge doesn't really get built on tanks, it gets built on physical damage instead. But anyway, Sterak's Gauge is now very powerful because it synergizes very well with Yordle's Death Stance. Now, of course, Yordle's Death Stance, you're going to be taking true damage over time, and also you're going to be blocking a lot of physical and magic damage. And when you drop low enough on health, Sterak's Gauge gives you a shield. And what that shield does is it actually blocks a lot of the true damage. So you'll be able to stay pretty healthy with Sterak's Gauge and the shielding, and you'll be able to block a lot of the true damage that Death Stance is dealing to you. So very, very powerful synergy with Death Stance at the moment, and with Death Stance, as you saw earlier, with this being a very strong item, it just makes Sterak's Gauge even stronger. And I love the synergy right now with Sterak's Gauge and Death Stance. Force of Nature, just probably one of the best, if not the best magic resist items to go right now. I would only ever build Kainic Rukun if I'm building a lot of HP, like say Sunfire, Heartsteel, you're building a lot of HP here, then you can go Kainic Rukun. But Force of Nature, just in general, the movement speed that you get just gives you insane value. The extra magic resist that you gain as well when you are getting hit with magic damage is also insane as well. So Force of Nature, very, very strong. Again, very strong on support, so want a lot of movement speed and want to engage a lot in fights. And then we talk about Yordle Sunfire and Heartsteel. These two items just give insane synergy right now. Of course, with Heartsteel, you gain more health over time, and Heartsteel's damage will be increased the more HP you have. So you go Heartsteel into the new Yordle Sunfire, and you just get infinite HP and also infinite damage now as well. Again, with Yordle Sunfire, we have a new passive where Yordle Sunfire now is going to be able to deal bonus damage and leave a trail behind you, kind of similar to Shyvana's second ability, which is going to give you crazy amounts of extra damage. So you already have the old damage from Sunfire, but now you gain even more burst even more damage as well. Some people before that were building Searing Crown, like Amumu, Nunu, and Rammus, are now building Yordle Sunfire Aegis instead. Except for maybe Rammus that benefits more from the armor, but you can build Searing Crown into Sunfire Aegis as a second item. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Guardian Angel, still pretty good item. I still think it has its values. In terms of stats, it's not really great, and it is a very expensive item at 3,400 gold. But if you're against a champion that can, you know, pretty much one-shot you like Aurora or Kha'Zix or any assassins in general, Guardian Angel is still good to protect you from any lethal damage. Mantle 12th Hour gets built on some champions. I don't really see it too much, but I think people underrate this item a lot. Again, it has the Lifeline passive, so you can... this gets procced when you get low on health. The big thing about this item now is it doesn't heal you, it gives you bonus HP. So now if the enemy champions have anti-heal, it doesn't actually reduce the benefits or reduce the passive from Mantle of the 12th Hour. So you're still going to get 100% of the bonus from the Lifeline passive every single time, even if you get hit by anti-heal. Protector's Vow is more of a supportive item, but still gets built pretty much every game on supports right now because of the healing and shielded percentage, and because it kind of like works like Guardian on PC League, where you'll be able to give you and your allies a shield. Thornmail, it's okay on tank champions, but outside of tank champions, it never really gets built. You know, sometimes you want to build this on... well, sometimes you would normally want to build this on like more bruisers that are building more HP as well, like maybe Camille or someone, but just in general, Mortal Reminder or even Sororita's Grudge now are just much better for anti-heal because they just give you more damage. But Thornmail is still pretty good for tanks. Randuin's Omen, I think, is very good right now. I think if you're against 2 or 3 crit champions, which of course, as I mentioned, you just need to have the understanding right now of Wild Rift and understand what champions are going to go crit and what items they are building into. If you see the enemy champions, if there are at least 2 enemy champions that are building crit, if you have an AD carry that's building crit and say like a Viego jungle, a Master Yi, a Rengar, anything like that, you just build Death Dance as a second item. Randuin's Omen as a second item, and you'll be able to reduce the critical damage coming right towards you, which is going to be absolutely huge. With crit meta being the thing, I think Randuin's Omen is pretty underrated. I have still put it in B tier because it's still very strong to just stack health at the moment with Heartsteel and Yordle Sunfire, but Randuin's Omen is definitely a very strong item. Kanet Rikon, as I mentioned before, is very good when you stack health because it gives you more of a magic shield. But in general, I think Force of Nature is just better just to reduce the magic damage, but also give you extra movement speed. But this can still give you quite a lot of value. Frozen Heart is now used a lot more as a utility item on supports in general that deal a lot of magic damage. You can use this. You can use Frozen Heart to reduce the enemy's attack speed. There are some champions in the top lane that can still use this, but it's just not as valuable as what it was before. I think there are just stronger tank items at the moment, like Sunfire Aegis, for example, that you want to build over Frozen Heart. But if you need to reduce the enemy's attack speed and you deal magic damage, then it can be pretty good. Searing Crown is still a very good item on the champions that it works well on. Mumu, Nunu, and also Rammus. You know, these champions benefit a lot from Searing Crown, and they get a lot of benefit from Searing Crown. But outside of that, there are not really any other champions that benefit from this, but because them champions benefit a lot from this item, and it gives them a lot of power, that's why it's still in B tier. And then we move down into C tier. Spirit Visage at the moment is just much weaker than Force of Nature and also Kanet Rikon, so you never really want to build this item. Even champions that have a lot of healing and shielding in their kit, you just much rather build these two magic resist items instead. Thorn Shroud, not very good at the moment. You don't really benefit from the extra damage at all. You don't really benefit from the extra healing at all either. Yeah, Dawn Shroud's not very strong right now. Deadman's Play, again, probably one of the weakest armor items at the moment. You don't really help yourself with the extra movement speed. I don't think the value that you get from this item is also very good either. I just don't think these three tank items in general are just not very strong at the moment. Again, there are just a lot better armor items that will give you a lot more survivability in the game. Yordle's Redemption is completely bait. I still don't know why Enchanter supports build Redemption. They love this item in China, by the way. When I look at the builds, they build Yordle Redemption on Enchanter supports first item every single time. And I don't know why. Like, I just don't think this item is very good, especially now because it procs even without your AD carry being there. The reason why this item was somewhat built before is because you're standing your AD carry and you heal them every single time. Now you might just proc Redemption and not heal anyone on your team. Everyone might be full HP and now you might just proc it. I actually think this item got weaker because of the value that you get now from Redemption, and it now proc in even when allied champions are not nearby. But the problem is that this just doesn't get built on tank items because you much rather go Heartsteel or Yordle Sunfire instead. Iceborne Gauntlet, again, you'd much rather go for more HP items at the moment with Heartsteel and Yordle Sunfire. I can't think of any champion right now that would really go Iceborne Gauntlet outside of maybe Rammus if you build a lot of armor, maybe someone like Malphite. Outside that, you never want to build this item. It doesn't really give you a lot of value, and like I said, Heartsteel plus Sunfire is just a very strong item at the moment. And who the fuck builds this item? No one in the game. Yeah, just never build this item. This item is just completely worthless. They either need to remove this item or buff it to absolute oblivion to make this item very good, but this is very, very bad right now, so you just want to avoid that completely. In terms of support items, I'll quickly go through them. Ancient Coin is still very good. You can still use this quite a lot, and it gives you a more AFK stance when you're focusing more on auto-attacking champions, and you're focusing more on using crowd control on enemy champions. But Ancient Coin is still pretty decent, but I think there are just, you know, it just means that you're AFK really, and you can't really benefit too much from like extra damage from the other support item or Relic Shield being able to help you push lanes or get a bit of extra tankiness. Speaking of Spectral Sickle's down in C tier. I still think this is the worst support item, even though there are some champions that can benefit a lot from the attack damage or ability power, like Senna, for example. I think Ancient Coin is a lot better, and the same with Relic Shield as well. I think you either go Relic Shield or Ancient Coin. Even though Ancient Coin means that you're a bit AFK, I still think it gives you more value than Spectral Sickle. And of course, Relic Shield is probably, in my opinion, still the best support item to go, just because it can help you push minion waves. It can help you get a lot more tankiness. And sometimes for champions, you don't really need a lot of ability haste because you're getting so much ability haste from Zeke's Convergence, from Yordle Trap, and even items like Warmorgs as well. So you don't really need, I mean, maybe Ancient Coin moves down by 1. We'll have to see. In terms of boots, defensive boots are still very powerful, even though defensive boots did get a little bit of a change where you now only gain the value from defensive boots from champions. So now you can't reduce magic damage or aid physical damage from towers, from minions, from objectives, anything like that. So it makes tower dives a little bit more difficult, but just boots and defensive boots in general are still the way to go and still very, very powerful. Boots and mana, of course, just give you insane damage, insane value for money. If you're playing in any AP assassins or any AP mages, you go Boots and Mana every single game. Gluttonous Greaves is also still very powerful on AD carries. Berserker's Greaves buff, though, is very nice. Attacks restoring health on hit is also still very nice because you'll be able to get healing over time. And if your champion auto attacks a lot, then you can benefit a lot from Berserker's Greaves. So I'm thinking of champions that have a lot of attack speed, like maybe Caitlyn, Kai'Sa, Ashe. You know, these champions that have a lot of attack speed, you now restoring 8 health on attack might sometimes give you more healing than Gluttonous Greaves. But Gluttonous Greaves still gives you like 15 extra AD. And with, again, as I mentioned, with so much attack speed now in a lot of these items, you know, Bloodthirster, attack speed. Estus Reaver is the only item that doesn't really give attack speed, but Magnetic Blaster, attack speed. Mortal Reminder, attack speed. Soul Transfer, attack speeds. Novori Quick Blades, attack speed. Phantom Dancer, attack speed. Pretty much every single one of these crit items, bar like 2, are given attack speed over. So you don't actually benefit a lot from the attack speed from Berserker's Greaves, which means you'd much rather go for Gluttonous Greaves instead. But Gluttonous Greaves for the Omnivamp is a lot powerful on champions that use abilities for their damage as well, since you benefit from the Omnivamp. The boost lucidity, very, very powerful on enchanter supports. I still don't think you build this on mid laners and top laners, but enchanter supports benefit from boost lucidity insanely well. These boots are very, very powerful in the meta and just very, very strong. So you definitely still want to go for boost lucidity when you can. And then boots of outburst, still the worst boots in the game right now. You just don't benefit from the armor penetration. Even assassins would much rather go gluttonous greaves instead, but boots of outburst just isn't very good. Again, you'd much rather go Berserker's Greaves on like on-hit champions in the jungle, or if you're going for AD Assassins, Glutton's Greaves just gives you more damage. Well, not really more damage, I would say, because the 10 armor pen in the early game is better, but it gives you more late game damage because the 10 armor pen becomes useless later on. And it also gives you Omnivamp for survivability as well. And then move into the boots enchants. Obviously, a lot of boots enchants, a lot of changes to the boots enchants in patch 6.2. However, with all these new boots and chants, with all the insane value that these boots and chants give you, there are still 4 really OP boots and chants. And with, you know, Gale Force coming into the game, Gore Drinker, Stride Breaker, every single champion will still build any one of these 4 boots and chants. Veil Enchant is of course only a support boost enchant, but it's by far better than any other support boost enchant in the game. You now being able to remove disabling effects and crowd control effects, so you can use this as a cleanse now, makes this extremely overpowered and a very, very strong boost enchant. Quicksilver, again, similar to Veil, but more used on carries. There's a lot of crowd control in the game. So why would you go for something like Gale Force or Gore Drink or Stride Breaker when you're going to be CC'd for the next 5 seconds? Quicksilver stops all that crowd control and helps you a lot by giving you tenacity and slow resist. Gargle Stoneplate as well. Bit of adjustment in patch 6.2 where you now need to build armor and mag resist to gain more value, but even bruisers now building items like Death Stance and more of Malmortius would much rather go for Gargle now, because you still get the same, if not more value than before with the extra armor and mag resist that you're building. Say for example, right, it says increase your shielding by 0.1% up to 35% of the damage. So for every 1 bonus armor and mag resist, you gain 0.1. So for every 10 bonus armor and mag resists, you gain 1% extra value. So to get up to the same value that that Stoneplate was before, was it 24% or 28%? I can't remember what the value was before, but I kind of worked it out that you basically need like 50 to 80 armor mag resist, and then you'll be able to get the same value from Gargle Stoneplate than you would in the last patch anyway, which is just like, you know, defensive boots you just build, and then you build Death Stance, more Malmortius, boom, you get the same value, if not more value than Gargle Stoneplate than the previous patch. And Stasis is still very overpowered. It's still the most, you know, the most expensive boost enchant in the game. It still costs 1,000 gold, but it still saves your life every damn time. Such a powerful boost enchant. In 80, we have Protobelt. Protobelt is now a lot stronger than what it was in the previous patch. You've been now being able to reduce the enemy's mag resist by 30%, and also gaining movement speed after you use Protobelt makes this boost enchant very powerful on a lot of AP assassins and also some AP mages like Ari, for example, or even Kennen, even though they're more of assassins, but you can call them assassins, mages, whatever they are. Gives you more movement speed. It gives you the extra damage with being able to reduce the mag resist. Very powerful boost enchant. Gale Force also, I still feel like has a lot of value, even though AD carries will still probably build QSS or Stasis. I think the repositioning in team fights from Gale Force is very nice, and also it helps a little bit with your damage as well. So I think Gale Force gives insane value for champions that don't have a lot of mobility. Champions like Ashe and Varus, for example, very, very much like Gale Force. Then you have B tier, which are just standard boots and chants. I think Stride Breaker and Gore Drinker are like okay. I think they're very strong on certain champions. You know, Stride Breaker has insane value for champions like Garen and Darius, for example. But outside of that, it's not really that strong. Gore Drinker, very good again on certain champions like Fiora that can proc the vitals. Aatrox that gives you a lot of extra bonus healing, but in general, these boots and chants just get overshadowed by like Quicksilver, Gargle, and Stasis enchant. Magnetron, I think, is actually weaker. Magnetron was A tier last patch, and now it is B tier. I think this item is actually weaker than what it was before. You not being able to select the minion that you want to jump to, and now with this new hook mechanic being blocked by champions and minions, sometimes this boost enchant feels bugged as well, where sometimes you don't even teleport, because sometimes you're hitting an enemy champion that's standing right next to you or standing to the side of you, but because the hitbox is so big, you're just not teleporting at all, and you're just getting completely cop blocked by this item. So I don't really like this item. I think it's okay, but I think it's only good on certain champions that want to engage. Glorious Enchant, again, I think is pretty mid. It's nice though that you get bonus movement speed even when you're not moving towards a champion. So you gain double the amount of movement speed now just throughout using this ability, but now you just don't get that insane 70% bonus movement speed towards an enemy champion. But I think sometimes that was a bit overkill anyway, you know, 70% bonus movement speed. So I still think this boost enchant is very good on like Olaf and Hecarim. But outside of that, it doesn't really get used. And Locket is good on some supports that have AoE shielding or AoE healing, like Sonar and Seraphine, but outside of that, you just always want to use Veil Enchant. Then you have the C tier. Repulsor, again, in my opinion, I think is weaker than what it was before. Now with the delay of 0.5 seconds, you kind of want to use this on top of crowd control that you already have. I actually saw someone use this yesterday. I played against a Warwick that went a Repulsor on Warwick. So you ultimate in, you CC them for a few seconds, and as you're CCing them with your ultimate, you activate Repulsor, and then after 0.5 seconds, it knocks them away and also stuns them for an extra 0.25 seconds. So I think it can be good to chain crowd control on top of each other, but overall, I just think it's just not really used as much. Hydra, again, doesn't really get used. I think split pushing is still completely fine without Ravenous Hydra, and you'd much rather other boots and chants anyway. Again, I think this boost and chant probably got weaker. Dreammaker is okay. It was in C tier last patch. It still stays in C tier, but it's just a pretty mid boots and chant. And then Hextech GOP is good on some champions that want to slow enemies and allow them to hit their abilities much easier. But again, I think I'd much rather have Protobolt to reduce the mag resist, because most of the champions that use Hextech GLP are going to have CC in their kit anyway. Champions like Ari or even like Kennen, for example, or someone like that. And that's going to be everything for the items. As I mentioned, just take this tier list with a pinch of salt. Again, there are some items which just have insane value some games, you know, like Random Omen is like S+ tier when you're against like 3 crit champions. But again, I would say most, if not all of the C tier and D tier champions, D tier items, I should say, sorry, you should just completely avoid. I don't think any of these items are very good right now. Oh, I need to remove teleport because that's a summoner spell now. So you want to, I want to remove that now, but that's completely fine. That'll be removed very soon. And yeah, overall item situation right now, pretty much overpowered by crit items. AD champions are much stronger right now than AP champions with how strong crit items are, how strong Death Stance and Zeralda's Grudge is. However, there are some AP champions which can still benefit a lot from items like Infinity Orb and Death Cap. But hopefully you enjoyed this little run through, this little breakdown of the items in Wild Rift patch 6.2. If you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.